Welcome back, my friends, to Learning Torah Lishma. You know, someone sees that they're not being successful in getting married. One wonders, what should they do? So, of course, this is very, very long. With some practical advice, what Chazal tell us, and that is that one should take in his life the position in whatever he can of that of a married woman or a married man. What does that mean? So Chazal say that when a man or a woman gets married, that they need to leave their parents' house and they need to cleave and cling and become one. Vidavak be'ishtai. Right? The man has to completely connect to his wife and the woman completely connect to her husband. And for women this is harder because they're more connected to their parents' house. And it doesn't mean that you disconnect, but it means that the relationship you have with your husband is more important. That's what it means. And the same vice versa. That takes precedence. Because a marriage is not friends. It's two beings becoming one. A male and a female becoming one. And and the closest thing to that we have in our lives is like a brother or a sister. There's no way to disconnect. We are connected. Now, as a husband and wife, you're connected in even a deeper sense. So, this is what Chazal tell us. This is about someone that's married. So now, someone that's not married, what he should start to do in his life is take the position of someone that's married, which means that they start to be the decision maker. Doesn't mean, of course, lots of times we need to ask people for advice, but we take the advice and we put it into our database in our mind and we connect it to the situation and we decide what shall be done in this situation. Sometimes we need to talk it over with someone, but at the end of the day, we have to understand that what we're doing and the decision that we're making. And that's not to be a child and just to just go with what a person's parents say or what other people say. They need to make their own decisions. After they collect, that's that. Sometimes they need to collect information, but at the end of the day, they're the ones piecing things together and making a decision. That's the sign of an adult, that they're mature enough to combine common sense with what's happening and make a rational decision. A decision that's good for them and good for the people that are around them in a good way. And sometimes a person could find that they're in a house that this could be especially true by girls. Boys, the parents it's a little harder for them to keep control on them. But girls, it's easier. They're more submissive. It's part of their nature. And so girls can sometimes find themselves in a bit of a pickle, a very difficult situation, that if I'm in my parents' house, right, I don't want to just live in my, live alone, understand why would anybody, if you have a husband, you have a wife, okay, so it's, but just to live alone, just to rent your own place and be alone, right, most people don't want to just be alone. It's not conducive for your mental health and for your spiritual health, being alone. Now the You know who moves in? The Yetzer Hara, the Satan moves in. There's no one else there, right? So that's the guy who moves in. You understand? So now, of course, there are scenarios that needs to be done, or sometimes a person is very needs that. Of course, there are exceptions, but in general, that's person. It's not happy for a person to be alone, and it's not conducive for them physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, in every aspect. Just to be alone, to live alone, right? It's one thing you do. In spite of this, you go and you go to a secluded place for a little bit to be with Hashem. But just to live alone, right? That is hard. So a person, right, until they get married, I know there's a certain movement, move out of your parents' house. I can't mention for the non-Jewish world, but I can talk for the Jewish world, that's not something that is very helpful for a person. Now, the problem is when the parents are controlling, which is, again, more likely by the girls, by the women, that the parents are controlling them, and as long as they're in the house, the parents don't allow them to develop their own identity, their own common sense, and that they should trust their common sense, and all these things that when a person is doing is with a spouse, that now they both respect each other and they figure things out. You understand? The women are very good with coming up with different scenarios, and then the man is very good at piecing it together and figuring out what's the best course of action. And that's how things work. So but the problem is that if a person, where they're living, right, it could be by the parents' house, it could be wherever they're living, right? It could be they went to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael, and they are paying to be by someone's house. You understand? But that person is controlling them, is not allowing them to express themselves, to be themselves. It could be they went to a school that's doing that. You understand? There's all different scenarios. So first you could, if there's a way, sometimes people, they're not that control freak that if you explain to them that what they're doing to you, you understand, you explain it to them and you tell them that this can't go on, and I'm going to now be the one, I'm going to be trusting my common sense. I'm not going to allow you to always second guess it, and you controlling me. I'm going to be trusting myself, learning how to figure things out. Will I make mistakes? Absolutely, it's part of life. But to say because a human being makes mistakes, therefore he should never make a decision, then the person will never learn how not to make mistakes. You understand? And usually you won't make mistakes. So the few times that when you do, you'll learn how now to become better. And that's how when a person becomes older, they become wiser. That's why we find so many people today that they're old and stupid because of this. So, and that's just a process of life. And all these to say that since in the process of life you're going to make mistakes, therefore you should give your right of decision to someone else, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. So this is extremely important. Now, so in probably a good percent, a person, they could sit down with the person and explain it to them, right? The more likely case is when it's their parents, they could sit down with them and explain it to them. When it comes to other people, it could sometimes be harder. With your own parents, you could explain it to them, or your brothers or sisters or family, if you're at, you could sit down and explain it to them. And it's not like things are going to change immediately. You might have to remind them, but after a month or two, or the max 3 months, it's going to happen. Meaning, you don't allow them in those times to control you, but you keep, politely reminding them when they try to do that. And if you see after 90 days, for sure, once it's 90 days and you see they're still trying to especially if it's at the same level. But even if it's, Mia Tanikar, they're still trying to control you, even though they went down a bit, because they're afraid you're going to leave. But they just went down because they want to control you, but they know they can't do it to the extent that they are. Meaning, their whole thought is that they want to control you. But now, because you said that, they know they can't do it to the extent that they did it before. So therefore, they do it less so that they could continue to control you as much as they can. And, of course, you have to leave. However, if you see that they're actually trying to work on themselves and stop, then that's your discretion. If they're having a tremendous hard time to do it, it might not be the proper place. But if you see that relatively they got rid of it, then it's very hard to 100% they're your parents, you understand. But then it's fine, you understand. And most of the times it could be like that, and it could be and what better place to be than your parents, you understand, with your while a person's single. And if chas v'shalom, it's it's the other sinner, then a person needs to leave, and they have to they could go to other family that are more chilled out, in a positive sense, and they could try to rent room together with a few girls, you understand, kosher Jewish girls or kosher Jewish boys. This is another another way of solving the issue. Person has to be creative, see what their scenario is, and how to deal with it. And again, in life, you cannot not hurt people. It's just not possible. People have too many imbalanced character traits in themselves, that people that that in certain ways you have all different people are trying to harm you, whether they realize it or not, whether they're doing it purposely or not, you understand. So you have to stick up for yourself. Very, very important. But you could do it in a polite way, in a nice way. You don't have to do it in a nasty way, right? Usually things could be resolved doesn't mean you're not going to hurt them at all, but you did it in a nice way, you understand? You thought about their feelings and how you could say things in a way that it will limit how much it will hurt them, you understand? You're a caring person, as opposed to just ignoring their feelings and just attacking as revenge, or just to get them off of you, and you don't care what happens to them. You understand? And most people, everybody knows these things. It's just sometimes we need to hear it clearly in words, for us to reconnect ourselves. A lot of our life is just reconnecting to the sort of instincts, the common sense instincts, the wisdom that we had when we were a child. Children, they don't, in general, they don't have all these problems. They know how to deal with things, and they move on, you understand? For us, we as we get old, we forget how we dealt with things. and as a child, and then you upgrade it as an adult. Absolutely, that's one of the responsibilities of a parent is to as a kid gets older, it's amazing like how you forget everything from your childhood. You understand? As a child, you're memorizing everything, but once you hit a certain age, you just forget everything. Very, very interesting how that works. Um, and and part of the job of a parent is all that wisdom that a person has as a child, to remind them of that, and to put them in scenarios that they're using that in a pot in, and so they don't forget it as they get older. They might forget, when they were younger when they used this wisdom, but they won't forget the wisdom because you make sure that you remind them of that wisdom that they had, and then you mature it for an adult. You understand that uh, that's part of parenting. When people and people that do this for their kids, they have great kids. So, this is this is a win-win situation. So this is extremely important. Extremely important. Getting back to the main thing that we were talking about, and that is when a person needs to leave. Don't wait to the last moment. Figure out how to do things. Maybe you need to talk to someone that's old, to figure out how to say things in the right way. Maybe the old person could even, with them you could actually fix the situation between you and your parents. You understand? you know don't wait for the last moment when you're all tense and you're now just leaving, and then you understand. Recognize it at an early stage, and become a woman, become a man. It's very important today. The whole system is to keep people children. Unfortunately, even the Jewish system. I mean, it's not Judaism, but what is claimed to be Judaism, the way things are set up today, which is, which how kids are raised, and the ideologies, many of the ideologies, are not what the Torah wants, but are portrayed that this is what the Torah wants. Literally, what exactly what the Torah does not want is portrayed that that's what the Torah does want. Levels that are meant for people that are, like on Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's level, they say everybody needs to do it. These types of things, these type of inconsistencies, confusion, unfortunately, is in the system, and they mix it with the truth of the Torah, and it seems that what they're saying is true, and then people think, well, if that's true, then this is true, right? The best way to perpetuate a lie is to mix it with truth. Now, whether the people knowingly are doing this, not knowingly, purposely, not purposely, understand that's for Hashem to judge. You have to know that this is happening, and therefore everything is pushing people to stay children, and as you as a young woman, a young man, you need to, as soon as possible, create your womanhood, your manhood. It's very important. I'm not talking about becoming mean and not, cleaning saying no if your parents ask you if you could clean their car. That's not what we're talking about. Of course you clean their car. You understand? We're talking about you learning to trust yourself, and learning to get common sense, learning to trust your common sense, and start building that woman, that man inside of you. You understand? And that you have to learn Torah, you have to learn the halachas, you have to learn hashkafa, and you have to work. You understand? You need to physically work. There's no other way, way about it. A lot of parents today they don't know what to do. The kids they just don't see them maturing. They don't see them, you know, how am I going to marry them off? There's so many divorces. I don't want my child to be the next one. The answer is you have to let them work. You have to encourage them to work from as young as an age as you can. Now, of course, it has to be done in a healthy way, in a way, you understand, that's not dangerous to them or their health, or psychologically. You don't want them to start working somewhere next to an oven as a young age. You understand, if that's something that, a job that comes up, that's not something that, you understand, it has to be things that are, and you don't want them, the whole day working, because as a child, you need to teach them how to write, to read, how to learn. There's so many things you need to teach them, but there has to be also a time that they learn work. It's also a skill. They learn what work is, what making money is, how to put away, how much, okay, if I make money, I take X% to use now, and the other I put away for later. You understand? These things need to be taught to them. And the problem is that, in this false Jewish ideology is they're completely taking away work as the preferred way of life. That this is a part of the preferred way of life. It's learning, it's working, it's good character trait. There's so many learning halacha. You understand? There's so many things that just a regular balanced individual needs to be healthy. And certainly to be a high balanced individual, you need this. And but even a simple one, this is just basics. You understand? And what happened is today they took out work and they took out other things. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter had to fight just to bring Musar in. You understand? And of course you say, well, we learn Musar from the Gemara, and it's all nice, but the reality is that people were not learning the whole Shas and getting all the Musar. You understand? They were learning certain Masechtas, and they were very limited in the Musar that they were getting. They didn't learn Mishlei, and what Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was saying was the truth at the end of the day. That's what he was saying is true. So, you understand? So all these tirutzim, it's really not. It's a daichik teretz, It's not the real teretz. It's not. There is no answer. What Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was saying is correct, and that's why today, it took time, but we got Musar into the yeshivas, which is very important. But I think we need to more focus on it. We need to share klali at least once a month on midas, not just only Gemara, but also on midas. You understand? And people have to be learning different svarim and finishing them, not just saying Mesilas Yesharim again and again and again. When you become, when you're right now, you need to learn Chayvas Alavavas. You need to pick up information. You understand? You need to pick up information, and we're not. When you get older, then you'll be able, from all the nuances and the Mesilas Yesharim, you could pick up on so much more. But right now, you're not. You understand? You're young, and you don't have this great, vast wisdom and knowledge, and you need to pick it up. So you need to learn and finish more and more svarim. You understand? Listen to shiurim. Amida is very important. Listen to shiurim on how to be a good spouse, what your responsibility is, what the other spouse's responsibility is, and how not to be a control freak, not respect the other person's responsibilities in the marriage, and not to be someone that just takes over. You understand? It's like not to be a leech. Not to be a leech, not to be piranha, Some people, every time, the spouse, whether it's a woman or a man, whichever one, they're afraid to step in the door because they know that once they step in, their spouse is going to take a bite out of them. Sometimes you're afraid to talk to your spouse because every time you talk, they always take a bite out of you. You understand? Learn how to be pleasant, and if you have a fighter nature which pushes you to do this, then you need to marry someone like you, because then they actually, even though someone who's not a fighter is very hard to understand, but two fighters, they actually like the fact, as long as the fight, they fight in a similar type of way. In the old days, you could just do any fighters, but people today, even the fighters, they want to fight but have no consequence. So you need them to be fighting in a similar type of way, and they'll actually love each other because of they don't look at those bites. They look at those as like, uh, uh, you know, potential how I could get him back, or she. Understand? Um, just so they look at that like perks. You understand? So they don't see the failure. They just see how they're going to get that person back for what they said, and they just live this type of life, and that's how they think. And they couldn't imagine how someone else doesn't think this way as well, right? Which is pretty amazing, It's also a big important, me, the attribute to learn in life, to be able to see completely someone else and how they're experiencing life. It's a very, very important. This is one of the attributes that someone who is a tzaddik, a righteous person, needs to have. If they don't have this, then they're not a tzaddik, not yet. They could be on their way, but they're not yet a tzaddik. This is something that, because that is in Judaism, in Yiddishkeit, someone who's righteous must have this ability to put themselves into someone else's shoes and completely forget about themselves and just focus how that person is experiencing things. So this is, and it's not just that they have the ability, they have to do it. You understand? They have to do it. So this is extremely important. In all decisions in life, lots of times people will try to, your common sense says do this. You understand? Your common sense says, I don't care if this boy or girl is if she's a good girl, if he's a good boy. I don't care if he's learning full time. I don't care. Right? We've already negated that whole ideology. Understand that? But I'm just saying it because there's most of the girls are brainwashed in that regard. I don't care if he's going to an official shiur every day. That's not the point. The point is he connected to Torah? Does he have someone that he likes to listen to, and he's connected to Torah? You have a person going to shiur every day, but they're not connected. They wish they couldn't. They're just doing that for shidduchim. You understand? They're not connected. And why should they be? They don't like that shiur. And then you have someone else that let's say he listens to Rabbi Orlovsky. He listens to Moshe Weiss. He listens to Mizrahi, Rav Pesach Kron. And he really likes them. You understand? Of course, he puts aside time to learn halachas. You have to know how to, in general we know, but, you also have to learn halachas. So let's say he'll also listen to shiurim on halacha, you understand? Or hashkafa, all these different things, you understand? Even some news, he wants to get news, let's say, from Ben Shapiro. There's these other things. But when it comes to Torah, he has someone that connects him to the Torah, that's what you want. You want it doesn't make a difference if he's going to shiur, if he's, learning full time. That's not what's going to make a good husband. What's going to make a good husband is someone that's connected to Torah. You have these people that they're learning full time, but they're not connected. They don't even know. They're just living on this, like, not happy, not sad, some type of monotonous state. And then you have this person that he's working, but he has this rabbi that he really likes, his shiurim, and he's all connected to Hashem. He's all alive. And this guy that's learning the whole day, he's dead. Which husband or which wife? Because also wife needs to have that she's connected. It's a similar thing. Which husband, which spouse would you rather want? This energetic person about Torah, or this other person who's officially learning all day, or going to that shir, but is really is either not happy with it or doesn't know why that this won't bring them happiness. You understand? Because as a person in this world, you need balance, and you need many aspects in life. And because they're not balanced, they're like in this monotonous, not happy, not sad mode. Lots of people in the sad, you understand? So, this is extremely important, right? Our common sense says that we look for a good girl, we look for a good boy, and all these other things we push away. He's Hasidish, she's Ashkenaz, she's Sephardi, and all the different, every type of connections of those. You understand? Who cares? We have to get over. Well, he doesn't dress Ashkenaz. He doesn't dress Ashkenaz. Sfard. He doesn't say the words the way I do. Hasidish. Her family is Ashkenaz or Sfard. You understand? Who cares? The common sense tells a person that in the grand scheme of things, that's the point is, are you happy together? And are you happy people? You understand? Positive, happy people. That's what's going to make a good marriage. All these other things, the fact that you finish Shas, in the next world, it's very chashuv. But on this world, it's not, because this world works differently. And the truth is that to be a success in the next world, you have to be a success in this world. And in order to be a success in this world, you have to be balanced. That's what Hashem said. It's true. If a person, he could take all his time and just focus on one thing, and he could, let's say, right, what they're telling people to make that focus is learning, and not even like knowing how to pasuk, and just learning bi'yan, you understand? Not even covering ground. The idea is just learning bi'yan, or someplace it could be covering ground, even to be a paisik, but then, so they focus completely on that, and they forget about all the other areas in their life. And really, Hashem did not expect them to reach that level in learning that they reached. He wanted them to be balanced, because a balanced person is a happy person, is a good person. You understand? Is a successful, is a person that could do good for others, not just talking about financially as well. Hashem wants people to be balanced. And that's why he made so many of us. You understand? He made so many of us, so we don't have to reach 100% in each area, but we could all be balanced, and together we have all the keys that we need for life. You understand? Together. And that's unfortunately what's happening today, where people are leaving, and the people that are never, kiruv was never done to them, they were never offered to rejoin, their Jewish heritage, their Jewish people. They were never even offered that, or hardly offered it. And that's what's happening, that we're losing people that are from, people that don't know what from means. We're losing people because we stop looking at things as a collective, as together, and everybody is just focusing on themselves, and that's what they're said that they should do. You understand? So, to a certain extent, these people, of course, they're gonna deny it, but everybody knows the truth. This is what it is. We could go hours into speaking into it and explaining how this manifests. We don't. That's not our goal right now. Our goal now is talking about a person. What do they do? They see that they're not getting married. That was the focus of this Jewish class. What should you do? And the answer is, whatever a married couple does, do that to the most that you could do in your scenario, right? You can't be someone that's married because you physically don't have a spouse, but 80% you could present yourself like someone that's married. I've had people that they come over and they're like, "Are you married?" Or they just thought I was married, and I'm not. And there's a lot of people like this. Why? Because you present yourself. You present yourself as a man, and a woman presents themselves as a woman. I don't have to wait till I get married to do that. And that's very important for a person. Extremely important. And it's essential to get to the next step, right? If you want to go to space, you don't just wait for the genius to come. You do whatever you can now, and then all of a sudden Elon Musk partners with you. You understand? You do whatever you can right now. Right? This is how, lots of times we, people, let's say, like, why did Hashem make business? Why did Hashem make business? The answer is that there's marriage, relationships, good character, many scenarios in life that are not business. And really, all scenarios in life basically work the same. But all those can be confused. People can confuse us and how it works, because it's not something that I could really calculate if I'm doing something wrong. It's not so easy. But in business, it's very easy to calculate. If you're making money through lying, then eventually those people won't trust you anymore, and now a person won't be making money. So they'll know that lying is not good. You understand? So business, it's very hard to corrupt business because the person isn't successful. You understand? So they know that it's wrong. So business is Hashem gave us business for many reasons, but one of them is whenever we have a question, how do I deal with the situation? How do I resolve it? How do I go about it? Just think of, how would I deal with this in business? And then apply that same idea to here, to whichever area you're in. And it gives a person a way to figure out how to deal with things. It gives a person reality. And this is, we see that we're having generational, this ideology of full-time learning, generational, and we see that the kids are not growing up. You have parents that are still babies. You understand? They're still children. Missing tremendous wisdom, meaning a lot of wisdom of life they're missing, and the way that they calculate things is in a very childish way. And And that is because we took out, well, not we, but you know, we should say we, because if we're, physically, I'm not doing it, but as a parent, you're just going with the system, and the system takes that out, and we allow them to take it out. You understand? So to a certain extent, so I'm not going to sit and point, but we have to be honest. Am I allowing this? They do the idea of working, of business, to be removed from them, and if it is, then they do not have what someone who does work, that he can always think, if I was working, what would I do? Because 99.9% of the time it's the same calculation. It's a bit different, meaning you have to apply it to this scenario, but it's very similar. You understand? It's a very, very similar, extremely, almost the same process, but just applied in a different, a completely different area of life. So this is extremely important from a young age, in a healthy way, to teach them how to make money, and to get them making money, whether it's cutting grass. You don't want them cutting the whole day, and now they don't learn anything, they don't study anything, of course not. But you say you could do, you could do this amount of, time of doing that, and you encourage them, you understand, but you tell them, but you also have a lot to learn, so we want you to do that, mainly, 80%, 85%, we want you to focus on study, but 15, 20%, we want you to work and learn what work is, and how to be responsible. So this is, of course, in a legal, whichever country you're in a legal way, whichever is legally allowed. We're not, and also, if something is not safe, even if the country allows it, so still, we want it to be something safe, and not dangerous to their health. Understand, they're young children, or very young adults. You understand? Say before 18, very young adults, and you want them to do things, and something that's not dangerous for their health or their mental health. You understand? Of course, to do things in a proper way. We don't in the beginning of America, there was the children's, children, a lot of kids were working in these factories, and it was basically like child labor. You understand? That's not what we're trying to make. You understand? It's not. We want to make it a healthy experience, a healthy scenario in all their aspects of their life, mentally, emotionally, we want it to be something healthy and a healthy experience. But at the same time, we want them to have the experience of working. We don't want to prevent them from having that experience, because that experience is so crucial to turning for them to become mature. And the younger that an adult becomes mature, it's just so much easier for the parents, so much easier for the child. Understand? Child with confidence. It's so, it changes a person's life. Imagine you as a 15-year-old could have confidence in working. That is tremendous. Imagine how different you would be today if you had that, right? Maybe some of you did. You understand? So, when you turn 18, you're already a full-fledged man. You understand? So this is very, very important. Very, very important. And so we went through, we had our main topic, went through different topics. Whatever a person do, das es Hashem v'avdei, right? Know Hashem and serve Him. whatever you're doing, do it for a spiritual reason, right? You're eating. I need to have strength to serve God, to serve God's children, right? You help someone, right? He's paying for your service, but you helped him also. You served God's children. Das ist Hashem v'ivdeu. Now we're taking it to the next level. All the actions you do, make them godly. Make them godly. It's so easy. Just think. Take a moment to think and say, these actions that I do every day, right? This helps people. That makes God happy. That makes Hashem happy. That I'm helping out His children, His people. That makes Him happy. You understand? I did a good deed. That's something precious. That's something that increases my love with God because I'm helping His children. And when you help yourself, you're also increasing your love with God because Hashem wants you to care for yourself as well. Think like that. Think in a godly way. You know? So, and this is the proper godly way of thinking, not thinking in a godly way and becoming stupid. You understand? Well, if God wanted that, it would be all these things, God will do it because I'm doing this, He'll do that. No. Don't throw things on God. Don't. You take responsibility for your life. You take responsibility. Now, you're going to say, well, the verse says, throw upon Hashem your weight, the issues that you have, and Hashem will, give you sustenance. That's referring to when you're praying. When you're praying, that's how you think. But when you're now working, when you're outside of prayer, you take responsibility. In prayer, you pray to God that He should give you the strength to do the good that needs to be done. You're that the people that are trying to stop you, God should save you from them. Hashem should save you from them. That's what it means. Hashech al Hashem Yahavacha. When you're praying, that's what you're focusing on. But when you're doing, when you stop praying and now it's the time to do, you take full responsibility. This is tremendous. So you have to know when you're praying, you're just like completely relying on Hashem and asking Him to bless your endeavors. That's the mode when you're praying. After you finish praying, now it's time to do. You take full responsibility. I think this is a life changer for a person, and I think we can make our lives so much better, the people around us, our children and grandchildren, and this is extremely important. And if a person, most people could sometimes find themselves in a environment that's around them that does the opposite of everything we're saying, everything the Torah says, all the psukim, all the chazals. They somehow know the chazal, but do the opposite of the meaning of the pasuk of the verse. You understand? It's just mind-boggling. So, in the worst scenario, you just have to tell your kids but don't get into fights with the people in charge. In the better scenario is you have to start getting together people that understand this truth, that have their minds on right. Usually it's easier with people that work for them to understand truths because they have work as a parallel dimension of how to look at life, and they could take that and apply it to somewhere else. someone without work, it's very hard for them. There's not someone that had many years that he worked, or that is working. They don't have this parallel. They don't have this dimension of work in their life. This dimension doesn't exist, and their comparisons are very weak. Work comparison is very strong. It's very hard to 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 erode how work and how things work when it comes to work. You understand? When it comes to business, it's very difficult to erode that, because then you won't be successful. The only way to be successful is if you do things the right way. You could have short-time success, but then in the long time you see that it doesn't work. You understand? So this is and you try and you create your own community, and if you need to move away or sometimes far away, because sometimes they'll come after you, that's what you need to do. You understand? And just avoid fights. Do things respectfully. Don't fall to their level of babyishness. If someone argues with them, they want to destroy them. Just don't even allow them to this babyishness. Now you want to get them back and stop them and fight. Don't allow this baby way of looking at life to allow it to enter your atmosphere. Just don't. You're just not. You do not allow that to enter my atmosphere. You act like that, you're just not welcome in my atmosphere. You understand? I'm happy if you want to change. But that is just not allowed in my atmosphere. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not here to prove you. It's not, you want that? Tell them to come to me. You understand? Tell them to come to a big rabbi who understands these things, right? You're gonna need to find someone who's big that understands these things. You understand? To create your community. But yeah, if you don't have someone that, and altogether, you need to be extra in sync. To do it, all together. But it's easier if you have a big, rabbi that understands this and knows that this is the truth and wants things to be this way. It definitely will make it easier for the community. Right? That's why you're hiring the rabbi. You understand? Someone wants to go speak to the rabbi. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not the rabbi. Go speak to the rabbi. You understand? This is extremely, important. Again, this aspect of not allowing them to get to cause you to be in a fight. Very, very important, because this is how they destroy you and your movement. They get you into the fight, and then you don't have the kaichas, the energy, to create this positive movement. So either they win you by just overpowering you, or they win you by taking away your energy, and now you can't even do it. You understand? By them, it's a win-win. Whether they lose, they still win because they took away your energy. Just don't allow them to enter. And it's very important to find a great sage that understands this, and that they'll be your leader, and just send them there. You understand? And important. Let's say, just say, let's say you're in Lakewood, and you're trying to say that learning full time is not healthy for most people. And I'm not saying Rav Chaim Kanievsky, there are people that are exceptions to the rule, absolutely. But we're talking, but when you're, but in general, people, this is not, this is Rav Chaim Kanievsky is like a 0.1%, understand, maybe less of people. So you can't create Judaism for that. You could have a box, that if a person's an exception, You understand? Absolutely, you understand. But the general rule on how you do things, the way things have to be set up generally, is that work is part of life. Not that in general work isn't part of life, but there is an exception. You understand? The opposite. Work is part of life. If there is an exception, you find someone like Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Someone has a child that's like Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He's genius. You understand? He's spiritual. He's someone like Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Things could be different. Absolutely. You understand? But but most children are not like that. Like almost, it's like a 1% chance of having such a child. You understand? So, and one could even argue, even for someone that is a Rav Chaim Kanievsky, knowing how to work, knowing how to take care of yourself, is also important, right? You could even make the argument, which is what I personally, from what I learned, I hold, and what I understand the Torah to want, and logically what makes sense, that even someone who's an Einstein, let's say, or Chaim Kanievsky, you understand, they too should learn all the different skills of life that a regular person learns. They're just learning it on an extreme high level, as opposed to just going into one area of life and just like taking off like a rocket into space and going light years just on that one thing. It's better that they're balanced. It's healthier for them. It makes them more secure. Now, if someone wants to argue and say, well, if someone has a child like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, then they should just he should just learn the whole day. Okay, I'm not going to argue. I personally think that balance is more important. It's just that by them everything is like it's like light years above everybody else. You understand? That's what I think. But if a person wants to say that scenario should be complete learning, okay, right? And it could be sometimes, and it could also be that sometimes they should do like what I'm saying. Sometimes they should do like this other idea. You understand? It could be, depends on the scenario, depends where the person's living, depends on many factors. You understand? So I'm not, but to take that 1% and now to push away 99% and now just say and to swap it and to say the 1% is the 99% and the 1% and to swap those to say that everybody needs to be like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, take the 1% and now make 99% have to be like that, and now to say that the working is that 1%, to swap it, which is what's done today, that's just wrong. You understand that everybody could agree that that's not healthy for when we're having for us, for our children, for Yiddishkeit. It's just not healthy. I just mentioned, to my mother, I just, a lot of parents having it so difficult when it comes to money, financials, and they just don't see a way out of it. It's so, and what's the issue there is that you have a parent, right? They have a few kids, or 6 kids, or 10 kids, or 15 kids. And those kids in the system, all the boys are not allowed to work. Now the girls save their money, so they should be able to get married because they're going to need that money, to get a boy. You understand? So what happens? The parents are basically supporting for many years all the kids, and they don't bring in any money. Nothing. And it's one thing if a person has 1 or 2 children, or 3, right? Even 3 is a lot, right? Now in a Jewish family, we want to have kids. You understand? We don't We don't want to stifle the abilities that God gave us to have children. So we try and we see, and if we're able to have a child, then we blessed. We are blessed, and therefore the families are bigger. There could be 6, 10, 13 kids. It could be a lot of kids if they get married. Hopefully people get married really young. Of course in a healthy way, but really young. They could have, let's say, 15 kids because let's say someone started at 18. They could end up with 15 kids. So because you have time to span it out. You understand? So that's the Jewish ideology. If to have as many kids as God created you, that you could have kids, so you have as many as you can in a healthy way. So this is so yes, and so we're talking about so many things, we lose focus what we were getting into. So we were saying about having kids and family. I don't remember exactly what I was getting into, but something that does hit my mind at the moment now is family. Oh yes, now I remember. So we're saying that parents feel that they're supporting their kids, and then a lot of kids, because of the system, they can't get married because the system, the way it's set up with the resume and all this, prevents people from getting married, and certainly from getting married young. And what happens is the parents now have to support them into their 20s, into their mid 20s, into their late 20s, into their 30s. You understand? This is what's happening. And if it's a boy, you better keep him in yeshiva, because if he goes out, no girl's going to want him. So this is very, very difficult for the parents. And and then even if the child gets married and stays married and is happily married, right, very unlikely outcomes, you understand, for all this to happen. It does happen, but and to be financially secure, it's not just you're happy together, but your life is Gehenim, is HELL, because of financial, or kids going off the derech because you're immature. You never worked, you never experienced life, you understand? You're immature. You don't have the strongest base to fall back on, to figure out reality and common sense, which is work. You don't have that strongest base, and which makes you weak, which makes you look like a child, right? For a child, how do they, in their little mind, how do they look that you're an adult? So one could say that you're bigger than them, you understand? But when they get a little older, how do you do that? The fact that you make money. That's how they are machshiv you. And you say, well, that's just random. Well, Hashem made it that way, so that means that it's not random, right? We're Jewish. We do not believe in evolution. We believe that God created the world. That's what we believe, and that's what we know also. And therefore, if Hashem made the children think that way, it's to remind us that work, the importance of work, because it's the strongest fallback on figuring out what to do in a scenario. Is you say to yourself, what would I do if this was a work scenario? You understand? If this was business, it's the strongest thing. So if a person isn't making money, isn't working, then, I mean, it used to be that people here, let's just take BMG, they were making $350 a month, and now they raised it to $1,000 a month, but you have to wait 3 years. You have to be 3 years in the yeshiva in order to get a kollel check of $1,000, which is just absolutely. This is, if you don't have the money, just say you don't have it. You understand? Do what you can, but don't, because now people, they wait 3 years and then people get divorced because of that, and it's really hurtful to people. Man, he's sitting and learning, and he doesn't get nothing. You understand? Nothing. Men also, you need to buy things, you need to buy clothing, this, that. Even if your wife makes billions, a man needs to make something. You understand? He can't. That's part of being a man. You understand? And the scenario is that the wives are not making a lot of money, right? They're making very little money. That is the scenario. So why not help them out? And if you can't do it, just say you can't. Why do you make it that now everybody has to wait 3 years? It's very sad. It's very sad. We're not going to get into all these. I think I have this on other shiurim. All these things that come out when we make this crazy system. Now it's already a few generations in, so everybody feels they have to do it. Now they're taking advantage of everybody in the system. That's what's happening now, unfortunately. And whether they realize what they're doing, they don't realize what they're doing it on purpose or not, whatever it is, that's what's happening, right? I don't think so much into the intent. I think of the cause of what's happening from your actions. That's what I think about. So you understand? So this is how a kid looks at that. So it's there to remind us that work is extremely important. Extremely important. In becoming a man and becoming a woman, to have a lot of experience and many years of doing it to really build on that, and for most people, for probably 85-86% of people, they need to do it their whole life. You understand? It's you stop and you lose it. You spend your money, you don't have it. You stop working, you start losing it. You start reverting back to a child. That's just the reality. How that works, why that works, I'm not God. You understand? I'm not a psychologist. That's just the reality of life. You see these people, they stop working, all of a sudden they start acting like a child, like a baby. You understand? This is what happens. Don't stop working. Work. Always work should be a part of your life. As you get older, when you're younger, it's a lower percentage. As you get older, it increases, and then as you get older, it starts to decrease, but still a part of your life. Very important. You understand? Even if someone has billions, and they sold everything. They don't have to work nothing. They sold all the businesses. They're just sitting on cash. Be a Rebbe for free. Be, help a 501c3, do good things. You understand? Be active in the world. You understand? Do kiruv. Now you have a luxury that you could do things that before you didn't have. You understand? Before you couldn't work for 501c3. You needed money to support your family. But now you're older. Now you could do things like that. You have to always be busy. Now you don't, volunteer. Right? As a person gets older, you're going to have X amount of people that were very successful, and now they can start to volunteer to help the tzibur, to help the congregation. Right? There's this, I don't remember the name, but one of the Living L'Chaims that there's this woman that she has a whole organization that's completely free. I guess it's people that are older retirees that have money. And what do? They help young adults or anybody that needs to get out of debt and get their life, preferably to come to them before they get into debt, and to put their life on a trajectory of financial stability. And they do it for free. You understand? That is amazing. This is how things are supposed to happen. This is how things are supposed to happen. So it's important. It's very important. And yes, what we're getting back to what we were saying before. A person, they have a lot of children. It's very, very difficult. And then they're like, people say, okay, I can't have so many children. Like, no, you can't think that. No, that is the right thing. If you're doing this thing that's insane, then you can't have a lot of children. How are you going to do that? Some of them are going to go off, God forbid. You're not going to be able to take care of them. It's going to be horrendous. If there isn't money, then how are you going to take care of the children? Completely logical. Now, if a person is balanced and he is working and he's saying, well, right now I'm not making enough money to have enough kid, that's when a person has bitachon, when he has trust in God. That's when he has trust. I am working. It's not like I said working, I took away working, I took away that from the equation. No, I do work. And I don't just say I'm just going to work and I'm not going to, if you need to make more money and do something that makes a different job that makes more money, then you do that. You understand? You educate yourself. You have to be careful in a lot of these education courses. Make sure it's a type of education that doesn't hurt you, physically and spiritually and mentally. But you need to, so of course you need to educate yourself or change jobs and go to somewhere else that they'll pay you more for what you're doing. These people aren't paying you well, right? It doesn't mean you don't. Of course, you have to be very proactive. And so if someone is and they're making money, but they're gonna say another child it's a lot of money. That's when you have bitachon. When you're doing what Hashem wants you to do, and now you're saying, well, money-wise, I maxed out. How am I going to do it? That's when you have bitachon Hashem. It's funny how the people that do nothing, they're the ones that have bitachon. But the people that actually do what Hashem wants them to do, they're the ones that don't have bitachon. You understand? No, you have to remember, you should have bitachon. You're trying to be a balanced person, a loving husband, a loving wife, a good father, a good mother.